Welcome everyone to the first round of the World Blitz Championships 2023. We have Magnus Carlsen taking on Sergey Grigoriants. Magnus, of course, with a rating of 2887, the best player on the planet. Grigoriants, a strong grandmaster from Russia who now represents Hungary. And he has achieved quite a bit. He has a rating of 2532. There's clearly a big difference between Magnus and him in strength. We'll see if that manages to manifest in this game. Magnus opens the game with e4. Grigorians goes solid with e5. Knight comes out. And we have the Ruy Lopez with bishop b5. a6 kicking the bishop. The bishop moves back. And now, what does Grigorians do? Knight f6 is the most natural move. You bring your knight out. And he does that. Magnus plays d3. A very solid system in the Ruy Lopez. Just wanting a normal game, trying to get his bearings into the tournament. First rounds are always a bit stressful for everyone. Bishop comes out to c5. So more active development there. Magnus pushes his pawn to c3. Later on, the d4 break can be quite a potent one. b5, pushing the bishop. The bishop comes back on this beautiful diagonal. What I do not like so much is Grigorians taking a lot of time for his moves. But he's just trying to ease into the game. Bishop g5 played by Magnus, pinning the knight here. And now black needs to decide what exactly to do. Pushing the bishop away is a logical thing to do. Magnus keeps the pin on the bishop. g5 is possible. And with that move, the game can get very sharp. Grigorians down to 2 minutes 10 seconds. Magnus still above 3 minutes. He's showing his confidence not just through his moves but also his handling of the clock. Bishop goes back to b6. The position is completely fine for black right now. Now Magnus has to think. He doesn't castle. He doesn't put his king here. He plays knight to d2, developing his knight. And Grigorians now can go g5. He can even castle in such positions. It's not a big problem. But he's thinking about what is the move that he would like to play. He's taking his time. There's another idea, which is to put your bishop on e6. There's also a possibility to play your queen to e7. He goes bishop e6, a nice little move. Because if you take here, black wants to take back with the f pawn, bolstering his center. Now Magnus must decide. Generally, castles is the normal move, and that is exactly what Magnus has done. He's not afraid of black hurling his pawns down the board with g5. And Grigorians, with now Magnus having castled, could also be interested in castling. But look at the time difference. He has 1 minute 20 seconds. Magnus has 2 minutes 39 seconds. That's a huge time difference. It's also because Grigorians, I think, feels overawed by the situation, not ready for it. He needs to keep moving. It's only 11 moves that have been played. But he is a little bit confused, and I think this really puts Magnus in the driver's seat. He's also very confident here. So now, castling by black. Position-wise, black is doing absolutely fine. If you are white here, you have a few plans. You can go rook e1, knight f1. That is exactly what Magnus does. There's also another plan of playing a4. There's also another plan of playing h3. So there are many different plans that are possible in this position. Magnus chooses rook e1 because the idea is to put your knight here and then use it to move ahead in this direction. Grigorians goes for a slightly dubious plan. He wants to play his rook to g8. And then later on push his pawn to g5 when he doesn't have to worry about knight takes g5 sacrifices. Interesting, very interesting idea, but maybe not the best. So Magnus now takes his time and plays pawn to a4. So with this move, he's threatening to take and take the rook. So Grigorian moves his rook to b8. In that way, Magnus will get the open file, and you will see that top players do this all the time. They're playing first rook e1, trying to play in the center. Then they suddenly play a4, playing on the other wing. They are playing on all sides of the board, creating quite a lot of pressure when it becomes very difficult for their opponents to handle it. Now Magnus can take on b5, but he goes knight f1 and rook g8. This was the plan we were talking about that Grigorians wants to do, to play his pawn to g5. But with the pawn moving here, clearly the e3 square is a great jumping point to move to f5, which is weakened. So now Magnus has to decide how to continue. Here knight e3 looks like the normal way to do it, just putting your knight on a good square. Also there's this question whether you want these bishops to be traded. You know, you can also drop back your bishop to c2 and then unleash it on this diagonal with the move d4. So a lot of possibilities here. Magnus now takes, and the time difference has reduced. Look at Magnus's time, he has a minute. Grigorian suddenly starting to get more confident. He has 40 seconds. Magnus has a minute, and now he must trade the bishops. Queen d7, not a good idea, because now what Magnus can do is drop his bishop back. Yes, he finds it, and now d4, d5 is a massive threat. So this entire concept of queen d7 was not so good. He should have traded the bishops here. Grigorian's down to 25 seconds now, needs to play his next move. What is it going to be? It's just 20 seconds. Knight g4 played, which is a fine move, because with this, if you trade, the bishop comes here. But I think Magnus is not going to trade. He's going to keep more pieces on the board. Knight d5, fantastic. The bishop chops it off. Pawn takes. Knight drops back. Now the pawn is hanging, but Magnus instantly plays d4. Look at this bishop opening up with the queen coming up here and threatening a mate. Fantastic chess. Now Grigorian's in big trouble here, because his position is falling apart. This bishop has also opened up on this diagonal. He takes the pawn. A very good idea now is to play queen d3. Magnus takes here. Now knight f6 has to be played so that black is in the game, but he blunders with knight g6 here, and Magnus plays his bishop to f5. With this, the knight is hanging. Instant resignation, and the game ends in just 23 moves. That was a big surprise there in the end. The position was still unclear after knight f6. Magnus wins the game, but that's the thing. He put so much pressure on his opponent in the opening on the clock that in the end Sergey Grigorians wasn't able to manage it, and Magnus Carlsen wins.
AG, what are you doing? I'm on Wilder.
AG, why are you being so nice to me?
I'm on Wilder.
AG, why should someone be on Wilder?
I'm on Wilder.